tell you the recipes later, and I'm excited to do that. And I think that's it, right? We're good? We're ready to start up this rocket ship? I'm going to hand it over to my colleague from the newsroom of WNYC, George Bedarkey.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing this evening? How is the food? Yeah, great. So I'm George Bodarkey. I'm the Community Partnerships Editor here at WNYC, and I'm so excited that you are here with me on this culinary journey this evening. You know, there's something really magical about the combination of food and togetherness, especially during this time of year. My journey into the world of food storytelling at WNYC and Gothamist began last year when I invited New Yorkers to share the stories behind their favorite family recipes. It became clear to me very quickly that these recipes carry a lot of weight. They not only bring us together, but they also serve as powerful reminders of our roots. And I'm going to share with you now one of those stories from our series.
My name is Maram Abdalal, and I am from Jackson Heights, but originally Egyptian. When my mom cooks fried cauliflower at home, that just brings back childhood memories and her childhood memories. It's just such a comforting food. Cauliflower is so forgiving. You know, it doesn't have flavor on its own, but when you fry it, you can dip it in anything, and it's just comforting because she dips it in flour and milk and eggs. It makes a nice soft crust, but it also has like a creamy taste to it, and the cauliflower has a nice bite. And then you can dip it in anything, tahini, ketchup. I like to eat it plain because when it's nice and salty, it's just perfect like that. My mom would make it, you know, when we didn't have meat at home. You know, maybe she didn't have time to run to the supermarket to go buy meat because we would eat specific meat, and cauliflower was always available. Or when she wanted to apologize to us if she was a little harsh with a punishment, or or she felt bad, or we were having a tough time at school. It's also like a comforting dish that's like an apology dish. Like, okay, I'm not gonna say sorry, but I'm gonna make this for you, and you know I'm saying sorry, so leave me alone after this. That's the memory I have, you know, and just watching her making it, you know, even though it's simple to make for some reason, it has its own complication watching it, but I think it's more because I feel comfortable that someone's making it for me, and I just feel spoiled and relaxed, like, okay, she's got this. You know, you break a couple eggs in a bowl, you take the flour and the milk and you whip it hard, then you throw those beautiful like little trees or florets in the mixture. They soak a little bit, then you take them out and you can see the mixture oozing off of the florets, and then you just drop it in the oil and it's just like bubbling all around those florets. And then once they come out, like I have 5 brothers and sisters, so we'd all rush to the bowl that it was served in, and we're like trying to like bear the heat of the floret because it's so hot, and shoving it in our mouths as fast as possible. It's just a happy time. It's a comforting time whenever I think of those fried cauliflower florets.
That's just one of the many people that I met through the series, and that's thanks to a collaboration that we formed with the Queen's Memory Project. As you might have already gleaned this evening from their presence here tonight, Queen's Memory is doing a lot of great work to help people preserve cherished memories, family recipes in particular. And I'd like to introduce you to Meryl Agish from the Queen's Memory Project. Meryl, thanks so much for being with us.
Of course.
So why is it so important to preserve family recipes?
Well, I think you heard in that story just now, you can capture so much detail by talking about food, the love that a family expresses through food when they can't quite say it through words, as she said. It's a sideways approach of learning more about a person, what's important to them, what values do they have, where did they grow up, what do they remember from childhood or from cooking later on in life. And not everybody's a chef, a cook, a baker, but everybody eats, and everybody has something that they can share based on some memorable experience. It can be a meal, a tradition, a thing that they wish they could recreate that they have never been able to recreate again. I think it's a beautiful, universal experience that everybody can talk about.
And tell us more about the work that you're doing to preserve family recipes in Queens.
Sure. So we are with the Queen's Memory Project at Queens Public Library and Queens College CUNY. Shout out to other public institutions of the city that are really important. And we do community-led archiving and oral history collecting. And in the last year, we've produced 2 volumes of community cookbooks. One was a totally Zoom virtual collection that brought together people in Queens and also elsewhere because they just wanted to join and share stories and, excuse me, my voice. This year, we've been working with the St. Albans Library in Ridgewood and really thinking about how to create a community level, local level cookbook to reflect people who know each other from the neighborhood. And it's been a really wonderful experience to see month after month the same group coming and really loving spending time together. It is the highlight of my week every time I have one of these sessions.
Well, a big thank you to you, Meryl, and Queen's Memory Project for all of their great work in preserving family recipes and some of your recipes, if you had the opportunity to contribute. Meryl, yes. Thank you so much.
We are at the front. Please come by. Thank you.
It's my great pleasure now to introduce you to Michelle Carlo. Michelle is a native New Yorker. She's an author and storyteller who's performed all over the U.S. Michelle is also the author of Fish Out of Agua, My Life on Neither Side of the Subway Tracks. She is also the creator of the solo show called Fish Out of Agua, where she blends traditional Puerto Rican folktales with personal stories about growing up as a red-headed, freckle-faced Puerto Rican in an Italian-Irish neighborhood in the Bronx. I met Michelle a number of years ago when I was working on a story about New York accents, so you'll hear her accent in just a moment. And again, I met her last year when she told me the story she's going to share with you tonight about her abuela's coquito recipe. Michelle likes to say that she has 8 million stories about New York, and I'm so glad that she's here to tell us one of her very own. So without further ado, here's Michelle Carlo.
Thank you, George. For those of you who know me from the past, I know that's a blast from the past. Hi, everybody, and thank you, George. Oh, my God, this is so amazing to be here this evening. So how do you all like the tasting menu of all these delicious foods? Oh, my God. Like, I tried them all, and I have to say that I jumped the line. I was like, I'm a performer. Can I eat now? But it was sorry if I got in front of you, but it was just so delicious and so good. So there's more tasting menus. This is a full menu of entertainment for you this evening and informative learning, educational stuff. So I'm like, I guess, what you would call the opening act, but I like to think of myself as the appetizer. And there's so much more to come. There's me, there's my friend and storytelling colleague, Jamie Brickhouse, and then it's going to be followed by some more food for thought. There's going to be a metaphorically meaty, nutritious, and informative panel discussion moderated by Arun Venugopal, senior reporter for the WNYC Race and Justice Unit. And the title of that panel is Flavors of Resilience. And it's going to explore the profound influence of immigrant entrepreneurs in New York City's culinary scene. I mean, it's a story that spans many generations, and it continues to unfold and unfold and unfold as time goes on. And speaking of stories, generations, and cultures, do I have one for you. Christmas time, glasses clinking, 'cause it's time to start drinking. A beautiful sight, this bottle so bright, walking in Coquito Wonderland. Go away, Borden's eggnog, champagne punch, and Swedish glögg. What I got right here is Latinx cheer, walking in Coquito Wonderland. Now in a blender you can put some vodka, only if you want a bellyache. Take a tip from me and you'll be smarter to add as much dark rum as you can take. Have a shot and you'll be smiling, or not too much, or you'll be crying. It's 100 proof, you go through the roof, walking in Coquito Wonderland. One more time, walking in Coquito Wonderland. Otra vez, walking in Coquito Wonderland. Thank you. So my name is Michelle Carlo, and I am a Nuyorican, which means I'm a person of Puerto Rican descent who was born and raised in New York City. My father's family was from Cabo Rojo, and they came here to New York in the late 1920s. Yes, I'm that old. My mom's family is from Corozal, and they came here in the late 1930s, which by that timeline for that island makes me a Mayflower Puerto Rican. No, it's true, because the big migration, the Great Diaspora, did not really happen from the island to the States until after World War II. And my family said, well, yeah, we've been here. Why did you take so long? So, but anyway, I mean, as the years passed and the families became assimilated and grew and generations came, ahead and ahead, we always kept our culinary traditions. I mean, a lot of times language goes, but you always keep the food. And one of the things that we always kept in my family was our recipe for coquito. Now, does anybody here know what coquito is? Yes. Woo, good. I don't have to explain it. No, but I am going to explain it anyway. Coquito, in case you do not know, is the quintessential Puerto Rican and also in the Caribbean, Dominican, Cuban, the other islands have a version of it, but it is our Puerto Rican quintessential holiday libation. It is the delicious, sweet, creamy blend of rum, coconut, rum, milk, rum, eggs, rum, vanilla, rum, spices, and rum. Oh, it's so tasty. And what's more, you can't just get around. Now, it's Google. Even Goya makes coquito now. What is up with that? But back in the day, a coquito recipe? No. This was every family had theirs. And there's always a bit of a variation. Some people use more of one ingredient. Some people use less. Some people heated it, which I thought was weird. Some people, whatever. The dark rum, light rum, different spices. But these recipes were guarded like state secrets. Like the CIA, the KGB, MI5, no, they could not get that out of the mouth of your abuela. Forget it. No, they would lose. They would lose. And the recipes would be no, you can pry that out of my cold dead hands. No, or but they weren't even written down. They were in your brain. So they didn't even trust to write it down because they said, well, it could be found, right? And so that's the way it was in my family. Nobody knew how to make my abuela's coquito because when it was the holiday time, we have coquito season. You know that, right? It starts around Thanksgiving and it ends around Valentine's Day because coquito is so rich, you don't really want to drink it in the summer. Or maybe you do because you're weird, but I don't. But by the time February comes, I'm done. I'm done for the year. But when it was time for my grandmother to start making her coquito, she would chase everybody out of the kitchen. Bang, bang, go, bye, 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 bye. You were not allowed in the kitchen while she made her coquito. And that was the way it was. But, I was a nosy and hungry child, teenager, young adult. And I always used to love watching my abuela make her holiday magic in the kitchen. It was just so fragrant and so delicious, and plus I got to taste everything. There would be pernil, and arroz con gandules, and plátano maduro, and tostones, and alcapuria, and ensalada de aguacate, and then dessert, there would be flan, there would be tembleque, and of course throughout there would just be coquito, and more coquito. But of course, when grandma makes coquito, you got to be out the kitchen. And when my grandmother died unexpectedly in 1994, my family thought the coquito recipe went with her. Or so they thought. Because on this one day, shortly before Grandma died, and she had kicked everybody out of the kitchen, and my family was either watching football, playing Super Mario Brothers, or having their bochinchero, I silently crept into the door. I don't know why. I just crept into the door. I thought, and for some reason she didn't see me. So I just stood there and watched her as she sang softly to herself in Spanish, and she made her coquito, a delicious, sweet, creamy blend of rum, coconut, rum, vanilla, rum, milk, rum, eggs, rum, spices, and it's so tasty. And the next year, when we had a Christmas celebration, I brought a bottle with me. And my family was like, what? Nah, no, we're not having this. No, 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 no. You can't. It's going to be disgusting. It's going to be gross. You don't know what you're doing. Oh my God, it's so delicious. How did you get this? What? How? 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 And I was like, I'm never going to tell you. You should have been in the hallway with me. So, I had to tweak the proportions a little bit, but I got it down, and now I have a great gift that I give and sometimes sell every year. And it's fantastic. It's so tasty. And I always thank my abuela, gracias abuelita, because right now I'm probably about the same age now as she was that day when I watched her singing in her kitchen. And as the years go by, I kind of find myself becoming more and more like my abuela, in the sense that we both share the same love of family and holidays and food and cooking and secrets. Thank you. You like that one, huh? What do you think goes with coquito? I say everything goes with coquito. Well, everything winter anyway. But, and since coquito is really kind of like a dessert in a glass, coquito would really go good with dessert, right? Oh, I made a pumpkinito for Halloween without the, it was so good. I'm not telling you how I do that either. But maybe one of the things that you might want to have coquito would be I don't know, a chocolate meringue pie. Yes. And with that pie, it reminds me that now I want to welcome to the stage the award-winning author and comedic storyteller, Jamie Brickhouse. Jamie is the author of Dangerous When Wet, a memoir of booze, sex, and my mother. And he also wrote and performed 3 solo shows, Dangerous When Wet, I Favor My Daddy, A Tale of Two Sissies, and Pearl Necklace, a gay sexcapade. He's also a heck of a pie maker, as we're about to find out, thanks to his abuela. Oh, his Cajun grandma, or I should say, his mama. Welcome Jamie to the stage, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle. And if I were still drinking, I wouldn't be on the stage. I would be back in that green room with that coquito. I was always over-serving myself. So, when I was growing up in Southeast Texas, every Thanksgiving and Christmas, you could always count on my Cajun grandmother, Mama, to show up with desserts. In her 3-tiered Tupperware pie container that was loaded with a pecan pie and a pumpkin pie. But my absolute favorite was her chocolate meringue pie. Now, the meringue was as high as her Queen Elizabeth hairdo that she had done once a week. The crust light and flaky. And the filling, a dark, rich brown, almost black like Texas crude oil. So when Mama died in the late 80s, I thought her pie recipes died with her. And not long after that, I moved here to New York City. And I discovered diner pies, and I was blinded by their showgirl opulence. Rotating on those lighted glass cylindrical vitrines. Oh my God. And they looked better than Mama's. And I mean, my God, the meringues were as high as the Empire State Building. They looked almost too good to be true. And then I tasted a slice of lemon meringue pie, and it sucked. The meringue might as well have been shaving cream, and the crust was wet and soggy like a noodle, and the filling like lemon-flavored petroleum jelly. And so I gave a few more diner pies tries, but they always failed the taste test, and I finally gave up on pies for decades. And then a few months before COVID happened, I was on the phone reminiscing with my cousin Lisa, and I said, but the holy grail of pies for me was Mama's chocolate meringue pie. And she said, you know what? I think I have the recipe. my mom used to make it. I said, oh my God, send it to me. And I vowed to make that pie, a little arrogantly because I'd never made a pie before in my life, but I was a pretty good cook. And so, without anyone's help, I made Mama's chocolate meringue pie. And it sucked! The meringue was flat as a flitter, the crust was tough, and the filling, baby shit brown. I decided to go fancy and use Ghirardelli cocoa powder, not Hershey's cocoa powder as Mama's recipe specified. So I was like, okay, great, check that off the list. Made the pie, failed, don't ever have to do that again. And then the pandemic shutdown happened. And as we're sliding into our first pandemic Christmas 2020, I said to my husband, Michael, I said, you know what? It's just the two of us, but let's do up the apartment. Let's decorate it. Let's put up a tree. We need a little Christmas, sounding like Auntie Mame. And I said, you know what? I am going to make that chocolate meringue pie. This time I got help from some of my pie maven friends. And I made the pie. And the meringue was as high as Mama's Queen Elizabeth hairdo, and the crust light and flaky, and the filling rich, almost as dark as Texas crude oil. And the taste shot me right back to Mama's Duncan Fife dining room table. And the success of nailing that pie was like the elation I had as a writer when I first nailed my first essay. And I was so excited that I started baking other pies of Mama's, lemon meringue and pecan and coconut meringue. And I was baking a pie every week. I had become the Mildred Pierce of Manhattan. And then I started posting my pie shots on Instagram. I called them Jamie's Gay Mall Kitchen. And people went nuts. Folks are mad for pie porn. And then I started making more elaborate, difficult pies from old cookbooks, like a chocolate-covered raspberry pie for Valentine's Day, and it was high and frothy, tall as the Mount Everest. I discovered when it comes to pies, I'm a size queen. And of course, there were some failures along the way, but I didn't give up like that first pie. I would fix it, I would try new things, and I was feeling kind of guilty because I'm a writer. And there was a manuscript of my second memoir that I hadn't touched in almost a year. I had reached an impasse and I just stopped. And, you know, pie baking is about failure, but it's also about showing up. And that's what writing is. Most of it is failure, but you just keep showing up. And so I thought, you know what? If I can commit to baking a pie once a week, I can recommit myself to that manuscript and write 10 pages a week and get it finished. And I started writing again, and I kept baking those pies, and I kept writing, and I thought, you know, since it's COVID, it's kind of sad that I don't have an audience for these pies. But then I realized I didn't need an audience. I was baking those pies for myself, which is also like writing. You have to care for and love what you're writing first before you can expect anyone else to. So baking Mama's chocolate meringue pie taught me to love the process almost as much as the result. And I thought, I wonder if it was ever like that for Mama. I mean, Mama always had an audience for her pies, a bunch of hungry grandkids. But then I remembered there was one of her pies I never tasted. It was a mincemeat pie that she made every Christmas along with her other pies. And when I was a kid, I said, Mama, let me have a bite. She said, no, you wouldn't like it. You wouldn't like it. Hardly anybody does. I don't know why I keep baking it, but I bake it every year. I guess I just bake it for myself. And now I do have an audience for my pies. And every Christmas, I bake Mama's chocolate meringue pie. And I also bake a mincemeat pie. But that one's just for me and Mama. Thank you.
That was Jamie Brickhouse, everybody! When Jamie says he has an audience, he's not kidding. Because what I forgot to mention before is, have you seen him on TikTok? He has this thing called Stories in Heels, where he has different heels and different stories and different pies and different everything all the time. Give it up again for Jamie. And now, as I said, Jamie and I were your appetizers. We don't have time. We don't have a palate cleanser here. We're going to go right into the main course, which is the Flavors of Resilience panel discussion, moderated by Arun Venugopal, the senior reporter for the WNYC Race and Justice Unit. So happy holidays, everybody. Hope you get some coquito. Arun, take it away. Woo!
Hey, y'all. Oh, so nice. What a jam-packed crowd we have here. Thank you for making it here. You know, between all the storytelling, men in heels, crazy stories, recipes, the conversation, the amazing food. This really feels like kind of like a festival of food, as I was telling George earlier. So thank you to George and everyone else who's put this together. It really kind of, has anybody seen the movie Tampopo? Yep. Best food movie of all time, I think. I don't know, anybody gonna argue anything on that point? Basically, it's the quest for the perfect ramen, right? It's this comedy, but it's also like this very profound film. It's the quest for perfect ramen, but it's also this message, right? Like that, the message is food is love, food is sex, food is death, food is life, life, it's everything. And that is, I think, what has drawn a lot of people here. Food's in New York, right? Like, it's why you're here. It's here in the city, it's why you're here in this room. But of course, we had to have a panel conversation to make us feel like we're a bunch of intellectuals and not just a bunch of gluttons shamelessly shoving food into our maws. Any immigrants here tonight? Few, okay. So that's what we're here, right? For generations, immigrants, right? They're the people who've been shaping the city's gastronomic landscape, right? People like you people, right? Like the immigrants who come here and put everything into offering up something delicious to people who crave something new and something yummy. But obviously it comes with a lot of challenges as well as opportunity. And story of long hours, frustration, resilience, adaptation, and innovation, and maybe hopefully some fulfillment. So that's what we're gonna unpack here for the next 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes or so with our conversation with these panelists. So let me introduce to you the people we're gonna be talking this through with, starting with Caroline Shin, Queens-based food journalist. Hand for Caroline, please, everyone. Next to her, Christine Borak, Chief Strategy and Advancement Officer at Hot Bread Kitchen. Carolina Gomez, an entrepreneur and Hot Bread Kitchen program participant. And on the far end, Krishnendu Ray, Professor of Food Studies and Director of the Food Studies PhD program at NYU. Thank you. And also, we have some of the entrepreneurs right over here. The people who've been feeding you tonight are also right over here, so give a hand to all of them. Really great food. Thank you all for everything that you've brought to us here. So just to start off, Krishnendu, I'm just thinking of my early-ish memories of this city when it comes to food. When I was a kid growing up in Houston, I would read all these kind of like, these books of trivia and whatnot. I remember this one book of lists or whatever. It was like, it mentioned this restaurant called Lutece. I don't know, anybody been to Lutece? Mm-hmm, yeah. Legendary restaurant. Here I am a kid, I'm like, what is this place? Like, it was on East 50th Street, and for decades it is widely, considered the finest restaurant in the country, amongst the best restaurants in the world. And of course it was French, right? And then I moved here in the late 90s, and it's not like I was going to these restaurants that held this, this status. I didn't have the money to be going to these places, but I knew even then, and for years to come, that the restaurants which had that kind of distinction, the cuisines which held that kind of distinction, that there was a certain very narrow set of conventions that were applied to what was best and greatest. And what I want to understand, just starting off with you, Krishnendu and Caroline, how much have those ideas evolved since then?
Caroline, you want to go first? Should I go? In some ways, you see one direction of change very clearly. That was what used to be called the la phase of American cuisine. Okay, and so what we have subsequently is a very strong performance. First of Italian cuisine. The Italian used to be a lot more mom and pop places. They became kind of upscaling of them by about the 1980s. There were a couple of exceptions before that. They became substantial, very strong presence. And we have pretty good data from Zagat's first, and then eventually, say, Menu Pages, Yelp, and now Michelin, which came to New York City, say, after 2005. And then a dramatic change was Japanese food. So my last analysis of the Michelin data was the most expensive New York City restaurants is most likely to be a Japanese omakase place. A median price of $265 before you start drinking. Okay? And then you still have the French at number 2 after that in terms of median price.
Yeah.
And then a couple of fast rising ones have been, other than the Japanese, is Korean now. Oh, wow. And if you look at, say, Pete Wells's review in the New York Times, if you look at New Yorker reviews, Korean restaurants are climbing very fast, like Atomix, for instance. And so you see that change in the opening up largely to East Asia. So one of the story is this interesting opening up of the hierarchy of taste. But the other part is, remember, we are talking about a world with about 200 countries, okay? And those at the top, you can count about half a dozen, okay? So there's a certain kind of an inequality, and a symptom of that, maybe I'll end with that to get a sense of how many of us know about the regional cuisines of Nigeria, or the difference between Gujarati food and Bengali food, like we know about Sicilian food and Tuscan food. That's a symptom of basically what my professors used to call cultural hegemony is. It gives us a window of attention. So we pay more attention to things that are dominant and less attention to things that are marginal. So in fact, it is not necessary to be the New York Times reviewer of restaurants. It is not necessary for someone like that to know the details of the difference between Kannadiga food, Gujarati food, and Bengali food. But I don't think a New York Times or a New Yorker restaurant critic today can be a critic without knowing the difference between Sicilian food and Tuscan food, or Piedmontese food. So that is a symptom of how far we have come, and we have come far in some ways, post-1965, thanks to the civil rights movement, thanks to new migration. But the world is still unfairly unequal.
I think also part of the cultural hegemony behind that also has to do, I do think that food media plays a large role in that because they're really directing tastes and trends, right? Or reporting on trends. And so when you have white media institutions that are, again, like predominantly, European descended white American palettes, and that's the perspective that they're writing from, then you can kind of think about like which cuisines or which dishes will actually get media coverage. And I think actually, and I'll talk about this later too, but I think social media actually played a really huge part in diversifying like what now gets written by traditional media. So social media actually kind of diversified traditional media's coverage. And then at the same time, you have the economics. I know you mentioned like the Korean wave. And then you have the economics of the countries, of the native countries. So South Korea, I mean, this is very intentional. It was a very intentional cultural push, whether it's like K-pop, K-drama, K-food, right? So that's how it became so popular here. And then you had the entrepreneurs who were bringing them over. First, there was Chung-shik, who leads the eponymous restaurant in Tribeca. He kind of really started this, this kind of fusion of like French technique with Korean food, and it's a really spectacular restaurant. It's like my go-to birthday celebration restaurant. And
Name again? What's it called again?
Chung-shik, Jungsik, and it's named after the owner, who really, he's kind of like the father of the modern Korean movement in the modern Korean restaurant scene in New York City. His name is Chung-shik Yim. And then after that, you had other, you know, like forefathers too, you know, like Tanji, Hooni Kim. He was like a major player in like pushing modern Korean restaurants. And then you had other players like Hand Hospitality. I think they now have like at least 5 restaurants under their belt. And then you have Korean immigrants like Sung Chul Shim, who came in, studied at Culinary Institute of America, like he worked with Danielle. He worked with so many different French chefs, and then started his own. Kochi Mari, they're 2 of his new, his first ones. They won Michelin stars. But anyway, so my point is, there are a lot of forces that are at play in what the cultural hegemony was, and then how it's now breaking down. But there's so much more. There's unapologetic hospitality. They're like really kind of like making a scene, like really trying to diversify Indian cuisine, and yeah.
I'm curious. You were raised in Queens, correct? Were there moments, or the particular moments, when you kind of realized that you were no longer living in sort of like a frontier, but that sort of like the gravitational center of the city's food scene had kind of moved closer to Elmhurst, Jackson Heights, Flushing, Woodside, or whatever?
Yeah, I actually always loved being in like a secret bubble in Queens where like no one knew about our big secret. And it's like, if you were from Queens, like you knew, you know, like the whole like, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And I loved that.
Yeah.
And what I do appreciate about, you know, like the locus of New York cuisine now coming to Queens, what I do appreciate is that now you're keeping a lot of these small businesses, a lot of them are mom and pop operations. You're really helping them, you know, be even more sustainable. They already had a local following for generations. I mean, there are restaurants that I went to with my grandma, my parents, and now I'm taking my daughter, you know. I think some of the challenges are when, if you're not from the community and you're coming in with a certain mindset of what that restaurant should be like, because I think a lot of restaurants in Queens are kind of like a little bit like flavors are a little bit more muted compared to Queens, because like Queens restaurants are for their cultural communities. So when you have kind of, you know, non-local people coming in with their mindset and their expectations, and then trying to kind of like detract from that chef's authenticity, that's when it kind of gets a little bothersome. But but generally, I think it's really great that the appreciation for their skills and their talent are finally being seen. I mean, this is why I became a food journalist. It was to put them on the spotlight, and then really like helping their businesses go, because as we know, restaurants are really hard to sustain. So,
Christine, why don't you just give us a sense, first of all, of the work you do and your organization. You're at Hot Bread Kitchen, and before we get at sort of like the challenges, as well as sort of like the extent to which what Krishnendu and Caroline have been saying, like how it influences the people who come into your program, just tell us broadly what you do.
Yeah. Does anyone else here know Hot Bread Kitchen?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great.
Yes.
That makes me feel really good. So Hot Bread Kitchen creates economic opportunities for immigrants, women, gender-expansive people, and people of color through 2 big programs. So first, we do a workforce program where we teach culinary skills and place you in really good jobs in the field. And then we also provide support to diverse small businesses in food. And shout out to BB Bakery and Sambuca, because they're also Hot Bread Kitchen businesses. And, just thinking about what my fellow panelists are talking about, when we think about ourselves, our voice as a brand, it is about elevating these voices. It is about, people ask us, like, are you going to partner with Danielle Boulud? No, shout out to Danielle, great restaurant. But, that's kind of, for us, that sort of established voice, they have their machine. And for us, we're going to really elevate the most exciting, the people who are unknown and the flavors that I think most people don't know about.
So tell me a little more about the kind of, your organization is actually, when I went on the site, I was like, wow, it's pretty big. Like a lot of people coming through those doors, going out there. What does that say about, I guess, the market and the demand for the people that you are coming through your doors and exiting them?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. So we've been around for about 15 years, and we've slowly been growing. And because we are really sort of a facility-based program, we grow as big as the kitchens that we can teach people. And every time we grow, we are maxed out. So right now, shout out to our sponsors. We actually now are in a fully sponsored space in Chelsea Market at the former Food Network space. It's a beautiful space, and we can fit about 35 people in the morning and then another 35 people at night. And so our facility is used from 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And we literally can't fit any more people in. And so we have an application process. And so for us, that really says that there are people who want to be in the field, they're excited to be in the field, and they really want to work. So we basically are, we feel like we're always going to be in business.
Carolina, I would love to hear from you. What's your story? You're a participant at Hot Bread Kitchen, correct?
Yes.
What is it you're doing right now, and what do you hope to do in the future with these skills?
Actually, I all the time now when I speak with somebody, I said Hot Bread Kitchen has changed my life for 100% completely. So it's coming this program when my life is very chaos. I have a separation for my husband, and economic have a very bad time. And when I start the program, so somebody tell me about the program, so maybe you can interested because I know you don't have a job, you're immigrant, and I understand that my psychologist said you like the food, so maybe you can interested. So in that point I say, okay, so I'm lost everything. I don't have nothing to lose to get the opportunity. So when I got over there, so I really so excited because I see that big kitchens. So, and the people so friendly with me and help me in everything. So, and I have, when I stay over there, so I say, okay, so this is only training, or what happened next to the training? So because now I need money because I need to give you food to my kids. I don't have a food. I have a problem with my rent. I have a bills. And this program, he give me the skills, but what happened next? So I have the skills, so where I need to go to get that job, get money for my family. And it's very surprised to me because all the time I'm dreaming to study for chef because it's my hobby. I like baking, cooking. I make cakes. I make food for different parties, but nothing professional. But all the time when I see the programs in the TV, so one day, I have the money to study for chef. And when Hot Bread Kitchen, he gave me the opportunity, and I don't need to pay nothing. And actually, I have a Metro card for my translation. You go to home and come back to the school, and a little money. So that's my big surprise. So
Cash.
Cash.
Cold hard cash.
Yeah.
Good old cash.
Yeah.
Good old cash.
And it's a very big opportunity to say, oh my God, so I never know this. So I stay here for 26 years. I never know this program. Why this program existed? And nobody told me that. And I'm so excited. So Hot Bread Kitchen gave me the opportunity. the skills, the motivation, and everything what I need to start my confidence. So now I'm very, I when somebody say, so I don't have a job, so go have their kitchen because you need it. You need it. And when I'm very bad in the middle to the program, so I don't have money, I don't have food, and I'm crying because I'm talking with somebody, say, maybe I need to go to this program because I don't have food. And somebody hear me, I'm crying, and he's coming with me and he say, so I can help you too. So I say, what happened? I need to go because I need to make it work. I need to make money because my kid, he don't have money. I don't have food for my son. And I say, don't worry. So I want to do something to help you. And the next day, I have a very different boxes with food. When he pay my bills for the electricity and give me another programs to get my rent. And when that happens, I say, oh my God, so now I have the skills. I have it, the practice, the safety for how to cooking, and what is next? I need to bake something. So I continue to baking cakes. I say, I call my friends, I have a cheesecake, and I have a flan, I have a chocolate flan, so very cheap, so.
I like how you use different phones you're holding, like an old-fashioned TV show or movie, right? There's like 7 phones.
And
don't say cheap next time. Say very expensive. Very expensive.
I like the editor here.
And this is, he making me motivation, and actually my English is not too good, but now it's better. Because actually in the Hardware Kitchen have a program to learn English.
Oh.
So this has helped me to get the confidence. Now I feel strong. I don't care. Everything happened, and maybe I have a lot of problems, but they say, I can do it.
So let me ask you. Do you know when, are you ending your time in the program anytime soon, Carolina?
You're done, and she's actually signing up for our entrepreneur program.
Okay. And at this moment, what do you think you want to be? What kind of business are you thinking about launching?
Now, I'm trying to save with my money when I spend, because I have a lot of work now, especially this Christmas and the New Year. Everybody want to, no one to cooking. He want to buy food. So this is good for me. And I'm trying to make a business with my son, because my son is...
He's in the audience.
Shout out, Austin.
Is over there.
There.
And my son said, Mommy, I'm so surprised. I'm very, I feel very good because you do a lot of things for yourself. And now say, I want to start to the program because I want to do the same to you. And he want to make a business with me. I want to try to get a restaurant or bakery. So maybe next year, so I have the surprise to get my own business.
Here's your willing customers.
Yeah.
All right. We'll come back to you for more with more questions.
Bakery.
More money.
More money, yes.
Because things are shelf stable, yeah.
Yeah. And actually I do that in my house, but the space is not big, but I'm trying to get a good space, not too expensive, and all my machines to do the baking. So that's my dream. So I'm sure I do it.
Yep.
I'm sure.
Yes, you will.
Krishna, I want to come back to you with some questions. When we talk about, it's very easy. It's possible you think of like, all immigrants is sort of a monoculture of, strugglers who are on the outside of opportunity and all, but that's not necessarily true, right? Like we have certain immigrant groups who who have access to wealth networks, capital, advanced degrees, that kind of stuff. We've seen these kind of restaurateurs who might have been, their parents might have been, having a small place in Flushing who launched like that next level of like fancy place that goes kind of like, it catches fire, and next thing you know, they're like, 18 franchises around the city or whatever. I'm just kind of wondering, how does this alter the equation, how we think of like, immigrant-driven cuisine in New York City?
Yeah, I mean, excellent question. And I think there are a couple of determinants. One is paperwork. If you've ever been an immigrant of any kind, the first obstacle is paperwork. Okay, so talk to any immigrant, right? And so it comes with a certain kind of what economists call citizenship premium and citizenship penalties, right? So one is paperwork. Second is Anglophonity. The difference, I'm an immigrant, the difference between me and say anyone else, say a taxi driver from, I'm partly Bengali, my father tongue is Bengali, and my mother tongue is Odia. The difference really is my Anglophonity. If you can speak English, that gives you a certain kind of cultural capital and access to it. And within immigrant groups, like let me give the example of, say, Indians, right, South Asians. Almost 70% of South Asians come with a college degree. So that's a very different immigrant profile than, say, a Honduran immigrant profile. And if you come with a college degree, and if you already know a language, if you're already literate, that's an asset. And this is not the first time. It happened with Jewish immigrants. Okay, even if you didn't know English, if you knew, okay, Yiddish or Hebrew, it's always easier to learn the second language. And then you have a beautiful, in the earlier panel, public education system. That is what really drives upward mobility. CUNY drives, not NYU, CUNY drives upward mobility. NYU is too expensive, And so, and that has been the historic pathway, and that is often linked to Anglophonity. So some of these immigrant groups look very different between, say, Honduran, Guatemalan. So again, that's a good example. We were talking about a terrific example, say Korean food, right? There are about 2 million Korean people of Korean heritage in the US. There are 2 million Honduran people of Honduran heritage, 2 million Guatemalan. How much of that specific food do we know compared to Korean food, compared to Indian food? Okay, so there's an internal division, and maybe I'll end with one last thing. And my prediction is, in terms of, say, South Asia and Indian food, we are going to get, and we're already getting, a lot more food writers than people who sell food. Because food is a very low margin business. Yeah. Okay, if you have a college degree, if you're Anglophone, you're not starting. So a high-end restaurant, a couple of $1 million in New York City. Okay, and the people I have studied, say in the ethnic restaurateur, people are starting with about $20,000. Okay, pooling these things together. So in some ways, what we're going to see in the near future is a lot more talk about Indian food than Indian food. And that happened with German immigrants replaced by Jewish immigrants, and as Jewish immigrants moved up, they became food writers, not food providers. That's happening with Indian writers right now. If you look around, if you're seeing the replacement, it's largely Anglophone, college-educated Asian groups that are moving into these spaces, and including the very important part of social media, which basically changes the arithmetic of a byline.
But we were just talking about, Caroline was just mentioning unapologetic foods, which is how many what are the restaurants that have come out? I mean, like these celebrated restaurants for the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? Like Damaka, what are the ones?
Sema, yeah, and
Sema.
You will see some of that.
Right. And you've got Madam Priyanka Chopra,
Sona,
married to Jonas, is like the celebrity couple of the decade. Our Dylan meets Joan Baez of our generation. These kinds of these people that 15 years ago I would not really have seen this thing. You have Sona and stuff like that. So there are these things happening, right?
2%. The data is that's about 2% of Indian restaurants in New York City.
Wow.
What is it? I mean, I'm sorry, 2%?
2% of the total number of Indian restaurants in New York City are upscale, that kind of visible.
Okay.
Okay? And that number changes. While upscale French restaurant is 50%. Upscale Italian is 24%.
Wow.
Okay? Of Italian restaurants. Upscale Korean is catching up now. It's about 18% now. Okay?
Wow.
So you see that association. 98% of Indian restaurants are largely relatively cheap curry houses, often run by Bangladeshi and Pakistani, some Gujarati Indian, some Punjabi Indian. Okay, so you can so if you look at income and if you look at Anglophonity and you look at the distribution, quite a different distribution, say between Japanese American, Korean American, Indian American, or say Mexican American. That Mexican number, by the way, is coming up. 6% of New York City Mexican restaurants are upscale now. That is a very new development. I see Mexican food as what hip hop did to music. Mexican food is doing to American palate. So lot more promising. And the South Asian thing, you will see that range. There's always, think about tabla, right? Is kind of one of the, there'll be some exemplars like that.
Yeah.
But most South Asians are not going to get into the feeding business because they have college degrees, because they speak English.
They're going to go where the money is, which is in writing journalism, right?
Maybe less work.
You want to add anything to this? I mean, in terms of like, you know, you're deep in some of these food scenes. I feel like, are you also picking up on how, I mean, if I drive down Northern Boulevard way out there and you're like, oh my God, like you can be a New Yorker for many years and be completely oblivious to how certain stretches of Queens look in terms of how nice and upscale certain sections are that may be outside of your geographic purview. As someone who's been following these things, do you also feel like there are certain, that certain groups are really kind of like, you know, that they have access to all the things that make for, I guess, successful restaurants and bringing a product to market?
So I think what's really interesting about downtown Flushing is that it's pretty much unrecognizable to me. The number of luxury high-rises that are in downtown Flushing now, it's crazy. Like when I used to take the Q44 bus, like there was no skyline. I mean, like now there's like a skyline and it's constantly changing. I mean, there's construction building more and more stories every time I visit downtown Flushing, which is pretty often. And what you're seeing, I mean, gentrification is a thing that happens all throughout New York City. It's a very dynamic city and everyone wants to live here. Well, that's what I think. But I mean, but I have a big bias. I think it's the best city in the world. But you know,
because it is.
Right. Thank you. Yes. So downtown Flushing, the gentrification that's happening there is not actually like a racial one or an ethnic one, but it is an economic one. So you have a lot of Chinese nationals actually who are moving in with, you know, like their parents' money. Their parents are buying them, you know, these apartments in these luxury high-rises. And then you have a lot of transnational corporations that are coming in. So you have a lot of China-based chains that are moving into downtown Flushing to meet this demand of this, like the deeper-pocketed, younger residents of downtown Flushing. So that's really it's crazy the amount of change that has happened in downtown Flushing. And that kind of like national Chinese restaurant money is also, you also kind of see it popping up in Long Island City too. But particularly in downtown Flushing, because that's kind of where I'm from, it's really, like you walk into like Chongqing Laozhou, for instance, and you know you're on Prince Street 1 second, and then you're in this beautiful Chinese village with like a little koi pond and a water wheel, and this is all within the premises, and it's crazy because I could not have imagined something like that when I was growing up there. Or you know, there's like Tangram. Like I'm used to like the Golden Mall or like the New World Mall or like the Hong Kong supermarket downstairs. Right. You know, like these like real kind of like, I don't know, these like, what am I trying to say here? These really basic spots there's no koi pond where I grew up there, so yeah.
And then if you go to like a restaurant or like especially like a dessert shop in Flushing, and everybody before they start eating, they're all like, okay, let me get this Instagram shot. They get the lighting and stuff like that. Everything is like IG friendly plating and stuff like that. And I always feel like, oh my God, I'm completely behind the curve on all this stuff that's going on out here.
So I've actually been photographing food for like with my phone or whatever for many, many years. So for a long time, restaurant owners used to come to me thinking that I was like a spy from a competitor, because I was doing this way before, because I've just always been obsessed with food and how like beautiful it is and how delicious it tastes. But I've had people, like owners, come up to me and be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I swear, I just love the food.
Hey, can I add one thing to it? Like this example is a terrific example. With the Chinese restaurant market, for instance, was largely targeted since the chop suey craze from the 1920 onwards to outsiders, and it is beginning to turn towards the taste of Chinese students and entrepreneurs. That's why the hot pot places, that's why the dim sum places. They're not at the upper end, they're in the mid-market now. Okay, so these, in different communities, there are different kinds of transformations of a hierarchy of taste based on your very important point, class. Okay, and of course ethnicity plus race and all those things work in a complicated matrix, which is absolutely fascinating. And we have seen this before. I think what we are in now is what used to be 1880, 1920s. If you have Jewish heritage, Italian heritage, Greek heritage, okay? And the transformation that was happening then, 1880, 1920, has been happening since 1965 with Asian and Latinx populations. Same transition, different people.
I'm thinking about this restaurant not far from me in Queens, Playground, great Thai restaurant.
Yes.
And I remember the first time I went there, before we even got inside, we had to kind of wait a minute or two. It's right underneath the 7 train at around 71st Street on Roosevelt Avenue. And they're like, oh, so what spice level were you thinking? I'm like, well, what's the the scale? They're like, oh, 1 to 5. I'm like, I don't know, 3 or 4. She's like, oh no, you don't.
You can't.
I'm like, what is this place? And I'm like, since then I'm like, a 2 is like my upper limit. I'm like, it's like this whole new world. They're like so uncompromising, incredible food, maybe one of the best Thai restaurants to my mind in Queens, meaning the city, and yet like I think like that's part of this shift that you're talking about. There's no reason to apologize, or I guess it gets sort of back to this idea that I don't know if people still talk about it. You guys can tell me, like authenticity, this framing of authenticity that was a very big buzzword thing for some years. Do people still talk about authenticity, or have we kind of moved beyond whether cuisines and restaurants are sticking? Is that still like a debate in your world?
So in food media, not so much, not anymore. I think because there's so many cuisines that are modernizing and diversifying. So you'll have a place like Havemar, which is Swedish and Ethiopian. And when you taste their like fried chicken dorawat, you're just like, damn, this is friggin' good. So you can't be like, wait a second, but this isn't authentic, because the thing is there is also value in that fusion that was created. It created this beautiful, innovative dish. And so that's happening a lot. So that authenticity it's really not like the buzzword that it used to be before.
Let's call it post-authenticity. I started that right here.
There you go. That's like,
brilliant.
I think it's like the 2 words you used, authenticity and fusion. Everyone is doing it. No one is using the words. So the word has gotten contaminated, but the practice is everywhere. For instance, I never set out to say, let me try to have inauthentic food today. So I'm always acting in search of authenticity, but I have learned not to use the word because the word has gotten beaten up. So it's a funny, very interesting thing. Both fusion and authenticity is what we are after, but the words have gotten contaminated.
I mean, I also think that there's a new definition of American food, and I think it's so informed by immigrants. And I think that there's this sort of now claim that, like, I've been here, my family has been here, this is American food. And I think that that's sort of taking the place of this word of authenticity, and I think everyone's really embracing that.
And so tell me, Christine, like, you've got these people. I mean, I just thinking when you said Havemar, that is an accomplished and highly respected woman chef who I can't remember her name.
Ariel.
We got to meet her, got the photo op with her. It was a great meal, and it was just a lovely restaurant. But I feel like, you're on the front lines of this kind of change right now. Are there certain, I guess, when people are going into this very daunting urban market, are there certain kind of cautionary or things that you tell your alumni to be careful about when they're committing themselves to this brand new life and career that they're putting out to?
Yeah, I think it's you really have to love it, and you have to live it, and you have to breathe it, and you have to sacrifice for it. And I think there's a difference between loving food and wanting to cook it for your family, but then you make the change to making it your livelihood, and really sort of going out on the limb and betting on yourself. And so, our job is to say, you're betting on yourself, how are we going to support you in that? And so you cannot come at it as a hobby. And if you do, we can help you have a hobby, but we're really not going to focus all our sort of nonprofit resources on the hobby. We want to create breadwinners. We want to create people who are going to support their families. And so we really, the caution there is, what are you willing to do for your business? And that's it. And I think a lot of people are.
Wait,
sorry.
Oh, no,
go ahead.
go ahead. I just wanted to say, I think there are two counter narratives that are happening simultaneously. So yeah, there is modernizing fusion food that's happening, but also there's what I think is really wonderful too is that there's also a lot of chefs that are digging deeper and deeper into their heritage.
Yeah.
So actually there's more authenticity there. So for instance, in Woodside, Jackson Heights, there's Huggy-san, and then there's also Zap Zap. There are two Thai restaurants that have been focusing on Isan food. So it wasn't this is not a pad Thai place. These are places where they're doing whole salt baked fish, and then all the different herbs that come with it. And then especially at Zap Zap, I know that one of the owners, he makes he works really hard to get all these really, really rare to find herbs in New York. So that's also happening. You're seeing a lot more regional differences, and I think that's really wonderful. I also see that there's this Trinidadian restaurant in Brooklyn called Arapita, and he's very much when people think of Caribbean food, they automatically equate it with Jamaican food, but it's not. And he's and I'm here to bring Trinidad and Tobago food, and this is how our food is not Jamaican food. Don't lump us into Caribbean food. So that's also happening too, and I think that's really quite wonderful.
You had something to add?
Yeah, to my question. Sorry, clap. Yes. More important. My question, in a sense, is there a sense in which you advise people to get closer to their heritage, or not too far away from it? Is that some of the kind of the advising one does? Because one of the challenges immigrant restaurateurs face is they cannot hire a consultant. So it becomes what we can see as intra-ethnic consultancy. That's why our menus look so similar. That's why my study of, say, the 300 Indian restaurants had the same spelling mistakes were replicated, because this is consulting, because you don't have money to hire a consultant, and you're trying to cook food for outsiders whose tastes you do not know. So in some ways, is that some of the consulting, what directions to go to, what directions not to go to? Is that something?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think the people that we work with don't know that they have a voice that's louder than they thought. And I think Carolina is a great example that I'm not sure 10 years ago she realized how powerful she is, right? And she's on the stage. She says she doesn't speak English well. I think you're doing an amazing job being on this panel. So, as an organization, what we say is, what is your voice? And we will never inform what that voice looks like. So, I think if, you're making Puerto Rican food that's vegan and that feels authentic to you, because it's tasted pretty delicious to me tonight, that's
so
right.
Good. So good.
That's right,
And actually, I'm Mexican, but I'm not cooking completely Mexican food. I cook in Chinese food, Italian food, Asian food, and different dishes I learned in Heartbreak Kitchen. So sometimes I'm repeat this again. So the staff in the Heartbreak Kitchen is very big staff. So everybody he have one exceptional word for the people go over there. It's a family. You feel family over there, and he tell you. He give you every tools you need to get your own business, and it's my first when I have my graduation. So actually I graduated this Friday, and the Monday.
Oh, wow.
No. It's example. No, I graduated last year. I'm graduating on the Friday, and the Monday I have a job. So he give you the interviews, because for me, I'm so shy when I speak with a lot of people. And
You seem really shy.
not now. And over there, I have a classes. Some people come to in the Heartbreak Kitchen, and actually I go outside to the school to practice how to get that job, why you want to work for that company, what you want to do, and it's exceptional, because when I said my first interview, I said, I was so nervous. Oh my God! So what I need to do? So if it's really or no, it's not real. So it's very excited. Is the word excited to get somebody say, don't worry, you can do, and it's amazing. Thank you for your work.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a little time left. Are there any questions of any of you in the audience who wants to ask any of our panelists anything? Right up front.
The program is called Half Bread.
Hot.
Hot.
Like, ouch, hot.
Okay, Half Bread.
Hot bread kitchen, hotbreadkitchen.org.
How long are the programs, the training programs?
The Culinary Fundamentals is a 5-week program, and so it's not what is a traditional sort of I went to cooking school. I went for 10 months. This is really about giving you the fundamental skills so that you're able to land a job. And, we sort of take for granted what it requires for all of us to be at our job, to stay at our job, to get to work every day. So we also provide case management and wraparound services, and Carolina mentioned English classes as well. But while you're in the program, we also give people cold hard cash, as we said, $200, and and the majority of the uses for the $200 is actually for childcare and food. So we have social workers on staff as well, for really as so many needs. And after the pandemic, a lot of it was for mental health, rental arrears. We provide, we get you vouchers for childcare. It's like, think about everything you need to get to work every day. Carolina also mentioned preparation for interviews. We also provide our corporate partners actually come into our cohorts and help with mock interviews and how to brand yourself in interview, so you have a story when you come into that interview.
And the requirements for the program?
It is an income requirement. We do serve immigrants, people of color, women, gender expansive people.
I'd love to hear from any of our vendors who were feeding us tonight. Like, what's the best advice you got? If any of you could have any thoughts about like the best advice you got either at Hot Bread Kitchen, or if you didn't go through Hot Bread Kitchen, you're here, you're serving New Yorkers, making them happy. I'm just wondering if there's any particular thing that you think got you to where you are right now that you're willing to share with us. And if you could just tell us your name and what your business is.
Oh, well, hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Stevens. I am the pastry chef and owner of Lizzie Streets NYC. We do a lot of Southern baked goods that also have that innovative twist that you guys are kind of talking about. I think for me, I started out as a hobby baker to kind of relieve my insomnia. And then the love for it just kind of grew. So for me, my vision is to kind of to give people who look like me, let them know that this is a passion that you can pursue, and also to kind of diversify that as well, but also to give us a voice, and also to be the representation as well, because you don't really, I feel like you see Southern desserts, but you don't really see it that often. So for me, my goal is to kind of do the fusion thing and kind of introduce different things to different people. So like it was mentioned, the love and the passion and the care behind the food is always something that'll keep someone to keep going. And I feel like in the food industry. So
Thank you. Anybody else want to add their thoughts?
Hi, I'm Glada, chef and owner at Sambuksa NYC. We serve Sudanese food all over New York. So I think the best advice that I got from Hot Bread Kitchen, this was before the pandemic, was to like track your numbers and, you know, make sure your margins are right. But, you know, just to keep track of your expenses all throughout your business. Because when I first started, I was just like, oh, you know, let me just cook and I'll take whatever money I made at work and then put it back into my business, and not, you know, separating my personal and my business. So that was, I think, the best advice I got.
In fact, that's one of the persistent problems of small businesses. Yeah. People do not pay themselves. They often work 12-hour days. They, in fact, do not know if they're really making money or losing money. So that's fantastic advice.
I have a follow-up question, actually, when it came to what you served us tonight, which I really enjoyed, and especially as somebody who's had samosas, but not sambuksas. Common thing, I'm sure. But like when it came to, you know, did you initially have the thought in your head like, oh, people aren't familiar with Sudanese food, they don't want Sudanese food, and so why would it do that? Or was it the opposite where you thought, nobody's tried this, or was it some combination of that?
Yeah, so my mom is actually Sudanese and Haitian. I actually started doing Sudanese and Haitian fusion food, but you know, everybody in New York was like, we already know Haitian food. Like, what's Sudanese food? So that's kind of how I started. And then my business was called Samosa NYC. So a lot of people came like, is this Indian food? And I'm like, no. And it was an educational process to kind of tell them like, this is Sudanese. So I changed it to Sambuksa NYC because it's a very specific way of saying sambuksas. And then these sambuksas, they're tiny, bite-sized, crispy. It's just my mom's recipe. Because I grew up in Switzerland, and in Switzerland we only had Thai pastry to make the wrapping of the sambuksas. So, and they're also smaller, you know. So that was specifically my mom. So that's how it started.
Great, thank you. And behind you, I guess there's just somebody who wanted to add their thoughts. Hi.
Hey. I wouldn't say I gotten any advice, but I would like to share advice. I started Black Rican Vegan in my Bronx kitchen in 2020 during the pandemic, and I feel like what made it successful was just posting on social media. It started as a hobby, and people was just really intrigued about what I was doing, how I was making pork into, you know, a jackfruit benin, and sparking a lot of interest. And I feel like what has helped a lot was just building trust with the community that I was building online. Even when I think about it now, that I was working in my apartment taking orders while I was still working 2 other jobs during the week, and the fact that people wanted to buy food from this Bronx girl and they would come to my apartment and get food, I think that's like crazy to me, especially during the pandemic. Like, you know, everybody got a social distance. They're like, nah, we gonna get your food. I think it's just, is you know, I've been really transparent with the community I build. I've been very real, authentic, and just building that trust and giving them something that they want week by week. And 3 years later, we're still doing it. And asking for their opinions. I'll ask them what they want to eat next week, and they'll tell me, and you know, we build a menu based on what they want to eat. So it's been a really interesting journey, and I would say the best advice is just be yourself, be authentic, build trust, build community, and find out what the people want and give it to them.
Well, thank you. I'm going to leave it there. I mean, unless there's any concluding thoughts anybody wants to add. Christine, anything you think you want to say that you haven't said tonight?
You can find us on hotbreadkitchen.org.
On that note, I'm going to thank all my panelists, Caroline Shin, Christine, Carolina, and Krishnendu, and all the people who fed us here tonight. Thank you for your delicious foods. Thank you so much to all of you who came and participated in this as well. Any final thoughts from George?
Thanks to you, Arun, for moderating, and a big thanks to all our panelists, as you said, and our wonderful vendors and the fantastic taste. I want to thank Queen's Memory Project for all the great work that they're doing. If you submitted the recipe, make sure you do stop by to pick up your envelope so you can have a digitized version of what you brought in today. I want to thank the TGS staff, the Green Space staff, absolutely. Big round of applause for all of the work that they do to make everything in the space happen, and all of the support that I get from the WNYC newsroom. And thank you all for coming, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays.